Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Happy Practice Podcast. I am your host, Adam Sierra, and today I'm joined by one of not only our associates, but also an awesome guy and a dear friend. Dr. Josh Funk is a physical therapist based out of Washington, D.C. He owns a successful 11 practice group with over 110 team members and more than 175,000 active patient visits this year, is what they're projected to do. Welcome to the show, Josh.
Thanks for having me. It's awesome to just have this partnership between Rehab to Reform and Weave and be out here in Utah.
It's been great to have you. How are you enjoying the mountains?
Loving it. I've been to Colorado and Denver, and I have to say this takes the cake for me.
Well, I hope you enjoy it because we want to have you back many times.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Love it. Well, today we're here to talk about thinking like a CEO. And I can't think of a better person to have that conversation with, especially in this space. Someone like you who has really had a transformative journey. You start out as a college athlete, you become a physical therapist, you open a practice, and you grow it into what it's become today. Before we get too much into the meat of everything, can you walk us through your journey? Let's go back to the very beginning when you're in college lacrosse and how you got to where you're at today.
Yeah, and I think a big thing that I have to mention before I touch on college lacrosse is my entrepreneurial journey most likely started even earlier. I was a paper boy. I was mowing lawns, and I had done swim lessons all before I got to college. So there was some entrepreneurial bug that was there, and it was just waiting to really find something that really connected me with on a deeper level. And that was where I got injured in college. I was told I would need surgery at the end of the season. And fortunately, as a result of my experience at Ohio State, the skills, the expertise, the overall collaboration between professionals there, and my shoulder got better and I actually deferred surgery. But then I went home for the summer, went to a community-based rehab facility, community-based PT facility, and was very underwhelmed. It was very, very much a night and day experience. What had originally been I get to go to the athletic training room. I get to go work with these people. I get to go work on my shoulder. Automatically became, I have to go to PT. So that friction or that grudge purchase was something I became aware of, and how a lot of individuals, unfortunately, that was what they had to settle for because they didn't have access to, the facilities, the environment, the type of professional atmosphere that I was afforded when I was at Ohio State or really any Power 5 school, a bigger athletics program. And that combined with my passion for the human body, my want to be on my feet, doing problem solving, working with people, really started that first spark when it came to the idea that I would eventually start a company that became Rehab to Reform.
So you start the company, and it's just you at the beginning, right?
Yep. In the beginning, it's actually me, and I convinced somebody from school to quit their job. And this is a funny moment, and we still look back on this. But I went to University of Maryland at Baltimore. A gentleman named Zach Baker also went to school there. He was a class below me, and he was from the area. So we were both working in an area of Maryland called Frederick. We were talking about how we were, just underwhelmed with our employment-related experience. And I told him about an idea that I had, this vision for a company, what inspired me to do it. And I convinced him to quit his job, and I gave him his checks in advance for the first 3 months of work to show him that we at least had enough money to pay for him for those 3 months. And he kind of, obviously on a whim and a little bit of trust and faith there, put everything that he could into being our first employee at the time. At this stage, we have something called stock units within the company ecosystem. So he is a part of that program at Rehab to Reform, but I'm incredibly grateful to him, and honestly, especially his wife, because I think his first kid might've been like 5 or 6 months old when he did that. So not easy to have a little uncertainty while you have a little one, especially, given the situation I'm in where I have a kid about the same age right now. But we would not be where we are today without him. And today he serves as our chief clinical officer.
Did you always know that you wanted to scale?
I had no idea that we would go beyond one location. Early on, I was just like, I can't keep working in environments that I don't walk into and light up,
Yeah.
that it doesn't remind me of college. And I wanted to be able to create that college atmosphere, that pro sports atmosphere, and be able to provide that to my community. And I think that, you don't know what you have until people start interacting with your business and your company, and people are walking in and going, is this a chain? Is this a franchise? And, it's kind of flattering because you're like behind the scenes at that point, to be honest, early on within your first 18 months, like your hair's on fire. You're constantly trying to solve a problem because you don't know a whole lot about a whole lot when it comes to everything and anything not related to the actual service. So at that point, people loved the branding. They love the overall energy and the atmosphere of, our small little startup clinic, which is what I would call it. And they love the deliverables. So there were certain things that were naturally speaking to them that were packaged in a way, at least early on, that were appealing enough for them to think there's no way that this is just a one location place, which again, very, very flattering. I think it almost gave me more of a sense of pressure or a little bit more inherent like responsibility to refine things and to tweak things and to put us in a situation where we were more professional behind the scenes. And fortunately, we were able to move out of that startup clinic. We're able to move into our first brick and mortar within, at the end of that 18-month period. And we quickly reached capacity. We had 6 clinicians fully busy in the space that we had occupied. And we were sitting there with a 10-year lease and we're like, wow, maybe we have something here. And that's where we old school took an old map, put it on the wall, took pins, placed them around where where their current location was and tried to figure out, well, how far are patients coming to see us and really what area would probably make the most sense? Knowing that we wanted some kind of, a little bit of an overlap so that some patients, when we opened up a new facility, would naturally go there. It actually ended up being in my hometown, which is super cool. So we opened the first location in Frederick, second location in Germantown, Maryland. For anybody who's opened up multiple locations, the second location was easily the worst. Like everything that could possibly have gone wrong went wrong. It was the time where I slept the least in the business. And just to make sure that I paint the full picture, when you're in a startup clinic where you're a subleasee in a small room, flat rate, very, very low cost, we were sharing equipment. We didn't have to pay for any upfront equipment costs. The space itself was very, very small. We had a small room. We would just walk out, use the gym equipment and walk back. When you have your own brick and mortar, you have startup costs associated with the equipment, your lease, and any other expenses related to the facility are significantly more. And the one thing that we didn't do at all through that transition from startup clinic to brick and mortar was we just didn't write anything down. So everything was reliant on stuff that was between our ears and we had no processes. So it really was that journey into eventually having a process dependent business and not a people dependent business. But quickly through that, figuring that out through the opening of the second office, it gave us confidence that we would be able to do this more and ideally easier. And that's exactly what happened with the opening of the third office. It was easier than doing the second or the first. Fourth office, things got easier. And then at that point, we decided, we were ready to kind of hit the gas a little bit. And knock on wood, we've been able to be very, very successful at this point. We're set to open up our 12th office here within the next couple of weeks. And it definitely leaves me very, very optimistic about our future to continue to scale and do what we are calling as an internal initiative, but we want to run the DMV, which is the DC, Maryland, Virginia area.
Yeah. It's like what you've done with it is insane. I was talking with somebody, I won't tell you who, but somebody else in the industry. And I was like, oh yeah, like Josh is killing it over at Rehab to perform. He's like, oh, I think it's going to grow to 100 locations.
I don't know about 100, but I will say we have a dartboard of about 20 to 25 spots in our region. And it's really important. I think one of the things that we try to do is we try not to get too high and too low We don't want to get too low when we have
Yeah.
challenging moments, and we don't want to get too high when we do have wins. And a big thing for us right now is creating a model, and we have an entrepreneurial model that provides incentives for people to help us open offices that we do think is a little bit more generous and unique. And obviously, I'm not going to get into the details of that, but if you put that out for people, they want to join your team and they want to open up offices in maybe their hometowns, kind of like I did early on. And again, that kind of leads us to having 20 to 25 very, very appealing markets in our area where we feel like already within our team that we have the people who are getting ready and preparing to make that a reality.
Well, and going back to not getting too low, when you were at that second location that was not going great, what kept you going?
I'm very competitive and I don't like failing. I don't like not doing things well. And I am also very stubborn. So when it comes to the competitive side and how that all kind of plays a part, people are like, all right, well, competitiveness and stubbornness sometimes can run counterproductive to one another. You have an individual who's stubborn, they're potentially stubborn about methods or potentially stubborn about doing things their way. I think for me, my stubbornness leads me to just continue to pick my feet up. As opposed to being married to methods or things that might not be working, I am more stubborn on the fact that I have to win. I have to find a way to win. And that led to me being very, very resourceful. And I think that's one of my strengths is I'm able to take in a certain situation. I'm able to do an appraisal or assessment or analysis on it and resource potential solutions. And that's obviously sometimes very simple through money, or sometimes it's more complex and challenging as a result of people and process being resources. So, that was really, really critical. I never was somebody that, again, I mentioned not trying to dwell on your wins and losses, but not trying to be in a situation where I'm allowing a loss to lead to delays. Okay, what's going on? It's not going well. Let's dive right in. What's the lowest hanging fruit? How do we knock those out? Okay, what big thing might we need to do to really, really move the needle for our team? And it's a lot how we solve things nowadays. When people hear maybe rocks and pebbles, they hear a little bit of more of like your EOS model or your traction book with Gino Wickman. I think a lot of executives or corporate teams largely handle challenges or they handle working on their business very, very similarly. But it was through that second location that I think I really earned my stripes, and I really learned that I think that I have a very, very unique skill set where I started to get more comfortable saying I eventually need to step into a CEO role. And that is a role that, would require me to eventually take a little bit of a step back from PT. But being that I have that unique skill set, that's what's in the best interest of the team.
You're obviously a natural entrepreneur, right? You were mowing lawns, you were doing the paper route. I mowed lawns too, and I did car washes. Car washes were like my bread and butter. Uh, so you've been entrepreneurial for a long time. How much of that, like, did you have to prop up with education? And what are some of those resources that you found that really helped you, become that next level and really sharpen your saw with the business side?
It's a great question, and it makes me think of those earlier periods of time in a very, very simplistic way. I understood the ability to communicate value and expectation. I understood the fulfillment side, and then I understood ways to potentially get, word of mouth or to get people to potentially share with other individuals what I was able to do in terms of, fulfilling upon the expectations that I had set. That's nice when it's just you. So I understood the solopreneurship aspect, but I think the thing that I didn't have a full handle of that I needed to learn a lot about was how a company overall operated with different departments, different people, different KPIs for different departments, how to potentially take one person and have somebody with a little bit more of a Swiss Army type of mindset that can eventually pull things away from them and have other people that are more skilled than they are and then working in unison, which at this point, when we have an admin team, we have a clinical team, we have a marketing team, we have a billing team. So you're talking about early on just not having an idea of how any of that stuff operated. The only thing I could do was sell myself, fulfill the service, and then replicate it. So, you got some natural gifts. I mean, fortunately, my mom's been in sales her whole life, so I can pick up on little gems and little nuances from her. And obviously, some conversations we had early on was very critical. But then going through a little bit more formal mentorship and formal business programs, stuff through SCORE, stuff through Small Business Development Center. I did Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses program, and then also did a program called Birthing of Giants, and then the follow-up program, Gathering of Giants, that I was invited to after making the Inc. 5000 the first time.
And walk us through the Inc. 5000, what that means.
Yes, the Inc. 5000 is a way for companies to submit their accounting. Our books for the year had to be submitted for us to validate that we are growing at a certain pace. So for us, we were included, and actually at this point, we've been included 5 straight years. We hope to be including a sixth straight year on the fastest growing private companies in the United States. So for us, that was very, very indicative of the fact that, hey, we're aggressively moving forward. We're aggressively expanding this company. And then with it, obviously that presents certain challenges, but you make a decision to have a company that scales, and a lot of the undertones behind that is because you want to make more impact. So, we're impacting more lives in terms of our professional team, right? Our company ecosystem. And then we're obviously, affecting people, not just inside the 4 walls, but outside the 4 walls as well.
Looking at your day now that you're a CEO, you're running a whole operation with, like I said, 110 employees, thousands and thousands and thousands of patients, many locations. How does your day look different now than it did when you first started?
Early on, my days were a lot more simple. I was doing patient care, and then I was largely involved in the transactions that were occurring at the front desk. So, basic roles and responsibilities that your front desk might be doing now. I was helping schedule. I was helping do initial verification, authorization as needed, and then just doing what I could to market. But everything was done on a relatively simple scale because the only people I was really concerned about was my schedule and Zach's schedule. So between the two of us, you can only have so much volume. And honestly, in the beginning, there were some days where you wouldn't have any new patients and nobody would be calling. So you would literally just be focusing on patient care. Now we have the amount of people that we do, we have the amount of locations that we do. There's a lot going on around us with regards to things societally, and they have been over the past 5 years. So you're constantly reshifting and reallocating your priorities with things that are going on outside of the company. But a big thing right now is I get to be a lot more strategic and proactive about what needs to get done. And we've had this conversation internally as a team. When you get to about 100 people, you have to kind of reinvent the company. And with things like AI and automation that have come out, you're reinventing your operating system. And we fortunately made it through the first decade of business. We want to make it a second decade. So we're asking ourselves, what does a company that makes it through the next 10 years now look like? What type of things do we have to adopt and adapt to? And I think that puts you in a much different mindset where early on in the business, I had so much ignorance about how a business operated, whereas now I have so much awareness for at least what we are good at and what we are not good at, that it really changes your ability to prioritize and really live out one of our core values, which is to operate on offense at all times.
I love that. And you do a fantastic job at it. We could talk for hours. My last question that I want to ask, for the people that are listening to this, they want to have more of an executive presence. They want to operate and think more like a high performing executive and a CEO. What would your advice be to them?
I think the biggest thing for anybody who wants to be an executive in a bigger or growing company, or who would like to be a CEO, is you have to really ask yourself how invested you are in the success of your people. And I think that my role, I always think of my success as being directly tied to the success of the individuals in the organization. So you could look at that on a financial level. What are things? What do things look like in terms of total comp and in benefits? Is that improving? Is that changing over time, or is it relatively flat? Or is ideally there's not a decline? And then what type of things are we doing to provide them a great workplace? What type of things might we be able to provide them for work-life balance? What type of feedback loops do we have in place so that they actually get to direct some of the directionality of the company? But your retention overall of your team will largely make or break you. So the more that you're able to prioritize wins for your team, wins for your people, and make sure that your company ecosystem continues to get more and more appealing as a result of watering your own grass, then you're largely going to be in a situation where I think you'll be a successful executive. And that is coming from a lens of being more bought into a concept called conscious capitalism, which I got exposed to early in my career, where we are focused on the stakeholders. And the number one stakeholder in your company ecosystem is your team, and that is your people. So you have to ask yourself if that is where you're leading from, if that is where your focus is, or if it's not. I would argue maybe it's not the not the right position for you to be in. You might have your efforts or focus somewhere else, and I would largely argue that people are potentially going to see right through that and put you in a situation where you might have difficulty commanding the kind of presence and making the kind of impact in the company that you would really want.
Well, Josh, it's been wonderful having you on the show. How can people find you?
At Dr. Josh Funk on Instagram is probably a great place. I'm very active on LinkedIn. Feel free to shoot me a connection on there. And outside of that, find me at any of the local trade association events, PT events, sometimes industry agnostic stuff. But I love a good handshake and a smile in today's very virtually connected world. So if we have the ability to meet in person, don't be a stranger.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I know I learned a ton, and thank you all for joining us. And until next time, stay happy and take care.